A jealous homeless boy secretly pushes a billionaire's toddler toward danger in a bathtub. But when the truth behind his desperate act is revealed, the shocking ending changes everyone's life forever. The morning sun poured gently through the tall glass windows of the grand mansion, filling every corner with a warm golden glow. The marble floors shimmered, reflecting the soft light as if the entire house was wrapped in quiet luxury. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, and the soft hum of a peaceful morning echoed through the halls. In the center of this beautiful world, a small child's laughter rang out, pure, innocent, and full of life. The billionaire's young son sat on the plush carpet in the living room, surrounded by colorful toys. A nanny knelt beside him, smiling warmly as she helped him stack bright blocks. Nearby, two housemaids watched carefully, making sure every little thing was perfect. The boy clapped his hands with joy as the blocks tumbled down, his laughter filling the space like music. Everything here felt safe, controlled, protected. The child had never known hunger, never felt cold nights without shelter, never cried himself to sleep alone. His tiny world was built on comfort, love, and endless care. From the kitchen, a chef prepared a fresh meal, while a security guard quietly stood near the entrance. Every detail of this home spoke of wealth and power, but also of a life untouched by struggle. But just beyond the tall iron gates, the world was very different. Standing silently across the street was a thin, dusty boy. His clothes were worn and faded, his shoes barely holding together. His eyes, however, were fixed on the mansion. He watched through the bars of the gate as the little boy inside laughed and played. For a moment he didn't move. Did he feel invisible, or simply forgotten? A car passed by, splashing a bit of muddy water near his feet, but he didn't react. His attention never left the child inside. There was something in his eyes, not just curiosity, but something deeper, something heavier. Why does he have everything, and I have nothing? The homeless boy slowly stepped closer to the gate, gripping the cold metal bars. Through the narrow spaces, he could see the bright colors, the smiling faces, the life he had never known. Inside, the toddler giggled again, reaching for another toy. Outside, the boy's face remained still, but his eyes told a different story, one of longing, pain, and quiet envy. Two children, same age, same world, yet completely different lives. Inside the mansion, happiness felt natural. Outside the gate, it felt impossible. And in that silent moment, something unseen began to grow inside the homeless boy's heart. Something small, but dangerous. Because sometimes, it's not the lack of things that hurts the most. It's watching someone else have everything you never did. The sun had climbed higher now, casting a brighter light over the mansion's wide garden. Fresh green grass stretched across the yard, perfectly trimmed, while colorful flowers swayed gently in the soft breeze. It looked like a place made for happiness. In the middle of it all, the billionaire's young son ran freely, his tiny feet stepping across the grass as his laughter echoed into the open air. A nanny followed closely behind, smiling as she made sure he stayed safe. Every few seconds, she called his name softly, her voice filled with care. Just outside the tall iron gate, the homeless boy stood silently, his fingers wrapped tightly around the cold metal bars. From where he stood, he could see everything. The bright toys scattered across the lawn, the soft blanket laid out under a tree, the glass of fresh juice placed carefully on a table nearby. Even the child's clothes looked soft and clean, untouched by dust or struggle. The homeless boy swallowed slowly. His stomach ached with hunger, a deep, familiar pain he had learned to ignore. But today, it felt stronger. Maybe it wasn't just hunger for food. Maybe it was something more. Inside the garden, the little boy stumbled slightly and fell onto the grass. For a second, there was silence. Then the nanny rushed to him, gently lifting him into her arms. "It's okay. You're okay," she whispered, brushing the dirt off his clothes. The child giggled again, as if nothing had happened. The homeless boy watched closely. No anger, no shouting, no punishment, just care. He blinked slowly, his grip on the gate tightening. If that were me, no one would come. A faint breeze passed by, lifting the dust around his worn shoes. He looked down at himself for a moment. His torn clothes, his dirty hands, and then back at the child inside. 2 lives. 1 world. But miles apart. He shifted his weight slightly, trying to stay hidden behind the gate. He didn't want anyone to notice him. He didn't belong here. And deep down, he knew it. But still, he couldn't leave. Because every second he watched, something inside him grew heavier. Was it wrong to feel this way? The laughter inside the garden continued, soft and bright. But to the boy outside, it began to sound different. Not joyful, but distant. Almost painful. The child ran again, chasing a ball this time, while the nanny clapped happily. And the homeless boy just stood there, watching, wishing, comparing. A single tear slowly formed in the corner of his eye, but he wiped it away quickly, as if even that was something he wasn't allowed to feel. Because when you spend your life without anything, even hope starts to feel dangerous. And in that quiet moment, jealousy didn't explode. It settled quietly, like a shadow in his heart, growing darker with every passing second. That afternoon, the gates of the mansion opened wider than usual. A delivery truck had arrived, bringing boxes of groceries and household supplies. The staff moved quickly, carrying items inside with practiced ease. In the middle of the quiet rush, one of the workers noticed the same thin boy standing near the gate. For a moment, their eyes met. The worker hesitated, then gave a small gesture. "Come here," he said softly. The homeless boy looked around, unsure if he had heard correctly. No one had ever called him inside a place like this before. Slowly, cautiously, he stepped forward. Within seconds, he was standing inside the gates. For the first time, the world he had only watched from afar was now right beneath his feet. He picked up a small box, his hands trembling slightly, and followed the others inside the mansion. The moment he crossed the doorway, everything changed. The air felt cooler, cleaner. The scent of fresh flowers filled the space. His eyes widened as they moved across the shining marble floors, the tall walls decorated with elegant art, and the soft carpets that seemed too perfect to step on. Every step he took felt unreal. Was this how life could be? He walked carefully, almost afraid that touching something might break the illusion. The sounds were softer here. Gentle footsteps, quiet voices, and somewhere in the distance, a child's laughter. That sound pulled his attention instantly. He turned his head and saw the billionaire's young son again, sitting comfortably on the carpet, playing with his toys just like before. The nanny sat beside him, smiling as she spoke gently to him. The boy stopped walking. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The laughter felt louder now, closer, real. He lives like this every day. The homeless boy's chest tightened slightly. From this close, the difference between their lives felt even sharper. The child's clothes looked softer than anything he had ever touched. His toys were bright, new, and endless. And the way the nanny looked at him, full of care. Something shifted inside the boy. Not suddenly, not loudly, but slowly, deeply. He placed the box down where he was told, but his eyes never left the child. His face remained quiet, unreadable, but behind that silence, thoughts were beginning to form. Heavy thoughts, dangerous thoughts, the kind that don't appear all at once, but grow quietly in the corners of the mind. The nanny laughed softly as the toddler clapped his hands again, completely unaware of the eyes watching him so closely. And for the first time, the homeless boy didn't just feel like an outsider looking in. He felt something else, something darker, because sometimes being close to what you can never have doesn't heal the pain. It makes it stronger. The mansion felt quieter now, almost as if it were holding its breath. The homeless boy lingered in the hallway, unnoticed for a moment as the staff moved in and out of rooms. But his attention remained fixed on the living area, where the billionaire's young son was still playing, surrounded by warmth and care. The nanny gently wiped the child's hands with a soft cloth, her voice calm and loving. "Be careful, sweetheart," she whispered, adjusting his tiny shirt. The boy watched every movement, every gesture of kindness, every moment of protection. And slowly, something inside him began to shift. His eyes softened for a second, but then a shadow passed through them. Because along with what he was seeing now, something else had begun to rise. Memories. Faint at first, then clearer. Cold nights, empty stomach, silence. No warm voice, no gentle hands, no one whispering, "You're okay." His breathing grew slightly heavier. The laughter in front of him started to blur, mixing with the echoes of his past. He remembered sitting alone in dark corners, watching other children from far away. Just like this. But back then, he had only felt sadness. Now, it was different. Why did no one ever care about me like that? The question stayed in his mind, growing louder with every passing second. He watched as the toddler reached out, and the nanny immediately responded. Every need met, every moment noticed. It wasn't just love. It was attention, presence, protection, things he had never known. His fingers slowly curled into a fist. A strange feeling crept into his chest. Tight, uncomfortable, burning. Was it anger or something deeper? He shifted slightly, stepping closer without even realizing it. His eyes no longer held just curiosity or longing. Now they held conflict, because when pain is left untreated for too long, it doesn't disappear, transforms. The boy's thoughts became heavier, darker, not clear, not fully formed, but dangerous in their silence. He looked at the child again, laughing, safe, untouched by struggle. And for a brief moment, something unthinkable crossed his mind. A thought so small, yet so powerful. What if everything changed? He blinked quickly, almost startled by his own thinking. His chest rose and fell as if he were trying to push the feeling away. But it didn't leave. Instead, it stayed there, quietly, waiting. Because sometimes the most dangerous moments don't come from loud decisions. They come from silent thoughts that are never stopped. The laughter in the room continued, soft and unaware. But inside the boy's heart, something had already begun to break. The sound of running water filled the bathroom, soft at first, then steady. Warm steam rose gently, wrapping the room in a quiet haze. The marble walls reflected the light, making everything feel calm, almost peaceful. Inside the bathtub, the billionaire's young son splashed his tiny hands in the water, giggling as small droplets fell across his face. The nanny knelt beside him, smiling as she helped him play. "Stay here, sweetheart. I'll be right back," she said softly, standing up for just a moment. She stepped out of the room, and just like that, everything changed. The door remained slightly open. Silence followed. The child continued to play, unaware, his laughter echoing softly against the tiled walls. Then, slow footsteps. The homeless boy appeared at the doorway. He stood there for a second, frozen, as if deciding whether to step inside or walk away. His eyes moved from the empty space to the small child in the bathtub. Water shimmered under the light. The boy stepped in. One step, then another. Each movement quiet, careful, but heavy with something unspoken. His breathing was uneven now. His chest rose and fell as the thoughts inside him grew louder. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. The child turned slightly, still smiling, still innocent, trusting. The homeless boy stopped beside the bathtub. His hands trembled faintly at his sides. Was he about to cross a line he could never return from? Why does he get to be safe, and I don't? The thought echoed in his mind. Louder, stronger. For a brief second, time seemed to slow. The laughter, the water, the silence, all of it paused in a fragile moment. And then, it happened. In one sudden, confused motion, the boy reached forward and pushed. The child slipped deeper into the water. A splash broke the silence. For a split second, there was no sound. Then, a gasp. Tiny hands flailed helplessly. The water moved violently now, no longer calm, no longer playful. The child struggled, unable to understand what was happening. The homeless boy froze. His eyes widened as reality hit him all at once. This wasn't just a thought anymore. This was real. The peaceful mansion, shattered in a single moment. The laughter was gone, replaced by something else. Something terrifying. Because sometimes, it only takes 1 second for a mistake to turn into something far more serious than anyone ever imagined. The sound came first. A small, desperate splash, followed by a choking gasp. Just outside the bathroom, the nanny paused mid-step. Her heart skipped as something felt wrong. She rushed back inside. And in that instant, her world shattered. The toddler was no longer playing. His tiny body struggled in the water, his hands flailing weakly as his face dipped beneath the surface. The soft laughter from moments ago had turned into silent panic. "Oh my God!" she screamed, her voice breaking. Without thinking, she lunged forward and pulled the child out of the bathtub, clutching him tightly against her chest. Water dripped from his clothes as his small body trembled. "Breathe! Please breathe!" she whispered in fear. The child coughed weakly, struggling to take in air. Her hands shook as she tried to steady him. Behind her, the homeless boy stood frozen, unable to move, his face pale with shock. "What have I done?" The nanny turned and saw him. For a brief second, their eyes met and everything became clear. "You!" she shouted, her voice filled with anger and fear. Her scream echoed through the mansion. Within seconds, footsteps thundered down the hallway. Staff rushed toward the bathroom, their faces filled with confusion that quickly turned into horror. "What happened? Call for help. Quickly!" Panic spread like fire. One of the maids grabbed towels while another reached for the phone, her hands trembling as she dialed emergency services. Voices overlapped, each one louder than the last. The peaceful silence of the mansion had vanished, replaced by chaos. Then, heavy footsteps approached. The billionaire father appeared at the doorway. His sharp, confident presence froze the room, but only for a second. Because the moment he saw his son in the nanny's arms, everything changed. "What happened to my son?" His voice shook, filled with fear no wealth could hide. The nanny struggled to speak. He was in the water. The father stepped forward quickly, taking his child into his arms. His hands, usually steady and controlled, trembled as he looked at his son's pale face. For a moment he couldn't speak. Only fear remained. Could he lose everything in just one moment? "Call the ambulance. Now!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the mansion. The staff moved faster than ever before. The homeless boy slowly stepped back, his breathing uneven, his mind racing. The reality of what had happened crashed over him like a wave he couldn't escape. No one noticed him anymore. All eyes were on the child. And in that moment, the boy understood something he hadn't before. Some actions cannot be undone. The sound of sirens began to rise in the distance. And inside the mansion, time felt like it had stopped, waiting between fear and hope. The sirens faded into the distance as the child was rushed to the hospital. Inside the mansion, the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. The chaos had slowed, but the fear still lingered in every corner. Staff gathered in the hallway, whispering in shock, trying to make sense of what had just happened. And in the middle of it all, stood the homeless boy. He didn't run. He didn't speak. 2 guards held his arms gently but firmly, keeping him in place. His head was lowered, his small frame trembling. Not from the cold, but from something much deeper. One of the staff members stepped forward, her voice sharp with emotion. "Why would you do this?" she demanded. The boy didn't answer. Another voice joined in, louder this time. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Still silence. But this silence wasn't empty. It was full of fear, confusion, and something else, pain. One of the older maids looked at him more closely. Her expression softened slightly as she noticed his torn clothes, his thin face, the quiet way he stood without resisting. "Wait," she said gently, raising her hand. "Let him speak." The room grew quieter. All eyes turned toward the boy. He swallowed slowly, his lips parting as if the words were difficult to form. His voice, when it came out, was barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to," he said, his voice shaking. A tear slipped down his cheek, leaving a faint line through the dust on his skin. I just wanted—" He paused, struggling to continue. The words felt heavy, almost unbearable. "I've been alone for so long." The room stilled. Something shifted. "What do you mean?" the maid asked softly. The boy looked up for the first time, his eyes red, filled with a sadness far beyond his years. "No one ever stayed," he whispered. "No one ever came back." His voice cracked. "I sleep outside. I don't always eat. I just watch people from far away." A deep silence filled the space. Even the guards loosened their grip slightly. "I didn't want to hurt him. I just didn't understand why he had everything." The boy wiped his face with the back of his hand, but the tears kept coming. "I saw him laughing, and He stopped again, shaking his head as if trying to escape his own thoughts. "I don't know what happened." The anger in the room began to fade, replaced by something unexpected. Understanding. The staff exchanged quiet glances. What they had first seen as cruelty now looked different. This wasn't just a moment of harm. It was the result of years of silent suffering. Years without love, without guidance, without anyone to show him right from wrong. The tragedy hadn't started in the bathroom. It had started long before that, in a life no one had noticed. And now everyone in that room could feel it. Because sometimes the actions we judge in a moment are rooted in a lifetime of pain. The mansion doors opened again, but this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Hours had passed. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the marble floors. The once peaceful home now carried a quiet tension, as if every wall was waiting for something. Then the billionaire father walked in. His face was pale, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. But there was something else in them too. Relief. "The doctor said he'll be okay," he said quietly. A soft breath of relief spread through the room. Some of the staff placed their hands over their hearts, whispering thanks under their breath. But the moment didn't last long, because just a few steps away stood the homeless boy, still silent, still shaking. The father's eyes slowly moved toward him. For a second, no one spoke. Everyone waited. Would he shout? Would he punish him? Would he call the police? After all, what else could a father do in this situation? The guards straightened slightly, ready for whatever command would come next. The boy lowered his head, unable to meet the man's gaze. "This is it. Everything is over." The father took a slow step forward, then another. Each step echoed softly, but the weight behind them filled the room. He stopped just a few feet away from the boy, and instead of anger, he simply looked at him. Not with rage, not with hatred, but with something no one expected. Understanding. "Look at me," he said calmly. The boy hesitated, then slowly lifted his eyes. Tears still rested on his cheeks. Fear was written all over his face. The father studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see beyond what had just happened, into something deeper. Then he spoke again, his voice steady. "Why did you do it?" The question wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusing. It was searching. The boy's lips trembled, but no words came out. The silence said enough. The father exhaled slowly, his gaze softening. And then, he did something no one in the room expected. Something that left everyone frozen. He turned to the guards. "Let him go." The words echoed like a shockwave. The guards hesitated. "Sir?" I said, "Let him go." They slowly released their grip. The boy stood there, confused, unsure if he had heard correctly. The staff exchanged stunned glances. Was this mercy or something else? The father looked back at the boy. "You made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "But I don't see a bad child. I see a child who was never given a chance." The room fell into complete silence. The boy's eyes widened, tears forming again. No one had ever spoken about him like that before. No one had ever seen him You don't need punishment, the father continued. You need help. The words landed softly, but powerfully. In that moment, something inside the boy began to shift. For the first time in his life, someone wasn't pushing him away. They were reaching out. And sometimes, the most unbelievable decisions are the ones that change everything. The night settled gently over the mansion, wrapping it in a calm that felt completely different from the chaos of earlier that day. Soft lights glowed through the windows, and for the first time in hours, there was peace. Upstairs, the billionaire's young son slept quietly in his bed, his small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. A nurse sat nearby, watching over him carefully. The danger had passed, but the memory of it still lingered. Downstairs, something else was changing. The homeless boy stood near the entrance, unsure of what to do, unsure of where he belonged. His eyes moved slowly across the room, the same place that had once felt so distant, so unreachable. Now he was still there, but everything felt different. The billionaire father approached him again, this time without tension, without fear. His voice was calm, steady. You don't have to go back to the streets, he said gently. The boy looked up, confused. You can stay here for now. We'll make sure you're safe. The words felt almost unreal. The boy blinked, as if trying to wake himself from a dream. Why? He whispered, his voice fragile. The father paused for a moment, then answered softly. Because no child deserves to feel alone. The room fell silent again. Something inside the boy broke, but not in pain. In relief. Is this what it feels like to be seen? A tear rolled down his cheek, but this time he didn't wipe it away. For the first time, it didn't feel like weakness. Felt like something new. Hope. Days began to pass. Slowly, gently, life inside the mansion adjusted. The boy was given clean clothes, warm meals, and a place to rest. At first, he remained quiet, distant, unsure how to accept it all. But little by little, he changed. He smiled. He spoke. He started to feel. One afternoon, he sat in the garden again, the same place he had once watched from behind the gate. But this time, he wasn't outside. The billionaire's son sat beside him, playing with a small ball. For a moment, the boy hesitated, then carefully rolled the ball back. The child laughed, and this time the sound didn't hurt. It healed. Could one act of kindness really change a life? The boy looked around. The open space, the soft sunlight, the quiet peace, and realized something he had never understood before. Not everyone who has everything is meant to be envied. Sometimes, they are meant to share it. The past could not be erased, but the future was no longer empty. And in that quiet, powerful moment, a life that once stood outside the gate finally found its way inside.